You're listening to The People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by FootballStadiumPrints.com. Let's start the show.
And as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, as Joe Watt stands over this one, he appears to be the one taking the penalty here. This is a huge confidence booster if you're Duluth.
Worst case scenario for City right here.
And it stopped!
Yes!
And it stopped!
Totally redeems himself.
Matt Elder redeeming himself. Oliver with the right foot. The shot of the goal!
Oliver!
Justin Oliver will break the scoreless tie. And it is 1-0 Minneapolis City. Is Hutton now on the offense with the left foot. And it is now 2-0 Minneapolis City.
Good finish.
Nick Hutton taking his quick victory lap.
Don't act like you don't know. This is The People's Pitch, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City SC. As usual, I am the Nate Morales coming at you between college soccer, high school soccer, children's soccer, soccer birthday parties, clown soccer, whatever, along with my faithful co-host. He's fresh off the plane, barely had time to say hi to his wife. Here
Literally.
with us tonight, it's John Bisworm. John,
hello.
Turns out the soccer life is having an effect on our relationship. I miss being able to talk weekly. Let's get back to that soon.
We definitely should. And I think we're gonna start. There's gonna be a bevy of one of the topics we're gonna focus on today is a hot topic, but I think there's gonna be a bevy of topics that are gonna be rolling out here soon from the club that I think we're gonna have to probably go to weekly. And then let's get some other people on, get some other voices on, and really get after it. But you're right. It's funny. The club is transforming, as people know, and some recent announcements, which again we'll get into here. But so is our involvement in the club. I would say, right? We're still fully integrated in the club, but things are changing a bit, and we're growing in a direction that we're still all involved, but things are popping off, man. And
lots more people involved,
which is a good thing. More hands make less work, but it also, we go into an off season and we're wow, our kids are getting older. There's more things to do. And it's just wow, no wonder why people can do this for a full-time job.
Exactly. Well, this week, man, let's do it while we're here. Might as well pod, right?
Yeah.
We are focused on the big news out of City HQ. Everyone has probably heard it here last, but Minneapolis City is leaving the NPSL. So I want to spend tonight talking about all the factors that went into that decision, the vote, and what we've heard from the members and the players around that decision, and then what that means for the club moving forward. And I'm sure, right, that peppered in the conversations, we're also going to be looking back on some of our favorite NPSL moments. There are so many.
There are. We're going to have to be brief. We're going to have to really hit the high one. Don't let something hit you on the way out, or whatever the saying is. Anyways, as everyone should know by now, after some discussion and as we do a member vote, 2022 will mark the final year that Minneapolis City competes in the National Premier Soccer League. Not professional. Don't say that word around those halls. You're gonna get your hand slapped. Like Game of Thrones, they'll cut your tongue out. So the National Premier Soccer League. So to say that the NPSL has been good to Minneapolis City is a bit of an overstatement, but there have been some really great moments. Regardless, with the team entering USL2, the local player pool being, what it is and what our focus is in elevating only local talent, we see that it's kind of difficult in us trying to continue our mission and stay true to it, being locally grown, and supporting that through 3 program types in the USL2, which we all know we embarked on last year, and we've had many discussions on how that did and did not work. with having a large player pool and then fracturing that with staying in the league that we've been in the longest, and then ultimately still continuing to figure out what to do with the young talent coming up, being at the Futures program, and staying in a league that many feel is a really good spot for that group of player type. So yeah, and then you look at it from a volunteer perspective. We joked a little bit about it. There's a lot more volunteers involved now because we have so much going on. But like you mentioned, the members voted, and we're going to pare back. And let's just get into all things paring back, Nate.
Yeah, we're pruning. We'll call it pruning. You listed
like a soccer bonsai tree.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
You listed a few reasons, but I want to cover really clearly and definitively some of them. Maybe for the people who might be new to this concept, there's always a decision whenever decisions like this are made, there's always somebody in the crowd that's like, "Wait, you're what? Why?
Yeah.
Haven't you considered this incredibly obvious thing?" And
no, we didn't. Yeah,
and so the answer is yes. But let's go over this, John. Why leave the NPSL?
So I think we talked about the experiment that we went into to continue to stay in 2 senior level competitions with a large player pool. By and large, that did not work. Right? We don't have to belabor that fact. It just did not work. And I believe it can work, and it could have worked barring the fact that we had major injury crisis. And then we were fracturing the ability for us to roll out the strongest team possible, which we thought we had, with the talent we had in our large player pool at the senior level. And then when you think about, okay, so 2 years ago, it worked in the NPSL because we were able to elevate Futures players to the UPSL, and then UPSL players to the NPSL. That worked, but when you're looking at it, when you're looking at the fact that you have these Futures players, they can't make USL 2, and it's not because they're not good enough. It's just that is too large of a jump. So
that could be harmful to their development.
Right. It defeats the purpose of us having the Futures program. Then why don't we just have one player pool that plays into senior competitions? Right. So, and that's not the point of having the Futures program. The Futures program's sole focus is to elevate an opportunity for players of a younger age bracket to showcase themselves and then be the future of what that senior makeup looks like. And having those players grow up in the club only helps with cohesion and gives us the strength of what we've done in the past with having locally based players. It works then because they've been in the program for a while. So the difficulties of having those 3 teams, injuries aside, it just didn't work because we weren't focused, right? And you look at it like a standardized test. So say I'm the smartest kid in my high school, and I'm going into taking the ACT, but the next weekend I have to take, or maybe even the next day, I have to take the SAT because I also want to cover off that maybe schools on the West Coast don't take ACT scores, or schools on the East Coast only take ACT scores and not SAT scores. So we were basically doing that, where it was we had 2 things we had to really focus on that were very, very important to us and our future, and we had to kind of cram for it every week. It was a cram session, and it was never fully baked out. We've done our player surveys, and they were I never really knew where I stood, and even though I knew I was part of this thing, I didn't know if I was part of that thing within this thing. And then then you have the coaching staff who the hell do I have at my disposal to put on the field this week? So that in itself, Nate, the difficulty of filling those 3 teams was probably the leading factor.
Yeah. I think that was, and you can tell that there just at times was not a ton of cohesion on the field, even though you had, 50 to however many guys in practice at the same time. It's but they're not week to week sure which team they're going to play on, depending on who's hurt, who's in form, all that stuff. And that definitely had an effect.
Yeah. And essentially, so the second point, like like talking about like focusing on players for a second, and I'll get into our second point. But when you think about like what made us great, it was like the brotherhood and the cohesion that we had. And yes, you still had that last season with all of these competitions, but you still didn't have like the guys that just know what the other guy's going to do because they grew up playing together, or they play in college together.
Yeah, all the
Because
same, or they've just played games for years together.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
at
You
this
didn't
level.
have that. You didn't have that anymore. And then you have to look at like who we're playing against, and you have to put out a strong squad. Like across the NPSL North, everyone leveled up this year. By and large, I'd say like people Joy Athletic took a step back, but they still had talent. But
Yeah.
you look at everywhere else, it leveled up, and then it was like, okay, well, what now? How are we going to level up to counter that when we can't even field, the same roster back to back? And then you look at the USL2, and we're playing against, very, very strong players week in and week out. It just wasn't working. And
hard
I
to
think,
hard to pull players out of hard to pull players down to meet the talent
yeah,
that we were getting the new talent that we were getting week to week
yeah.
in the
And
NPSL, right? There were only a
and
couple weeks when we had a lot of those players available.
yeah, and we saw what it was like when we fielded our strongest players out on the field. We were super competitive across all competitions. So like that's a sign that this model can work, but it's just not sustainable right now. It's not something that it's definitely not something that I would kick out of the bath for the future to maybe explore this again once we figure some things out. But right now and for the immediate future, it does not make sense. And then you look at from a player perspective, like and my last point about the futures here before we get into the next point is you can't rely on like producing a Loic Masanvi
Exactly.
or duplicating him like 5-6 times over to be able to withstand this stuff. We were very lucky that he was a lightning in a bottle, and he definitely was what we saw when we brought him into the program. And others have obviously seen that with what he's doing right now, or what he did most recently in playing, in a professional setup. But when it comes to players, you look at all of the new teams in the region, and not even just in the region, but in the state. There's so many other opportunities for the fringe player that we maybe made a wrong calculated decision on, that they can go and show out and prove us wrong. And some of those players did that went over to the new setup in St. Croix, or went to Duluth, that were maybe in our future setup, like Jesse Juarez, who ended up starting and playing every game at right back for Duluth. And great for those players. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at brass tacks here, we want to be the winner out of all of those things, right? But it was good overall for the soccer in Minnesota for us to continue to do that. But you're now talking about like we're trying to get the best players in that fit our criteria, and we have to make very calculated decisions on bringing in 50 of those guys and all the things that come with having all 50 and trying to keep them all happy, and then ultimately kicking out 18 of them on a regular basis to be able to compete at what was being thrown at us. And it just wasn't working because there was other options for people to go and play in and go and do.
Yeah, why would I wait in line to play for Minneapolis City when I'm at the front of line for St. Croix or Joy Athletic or
Twin Stars or whoever it might be? Yep. And it's interesting because like people look at our slice of the pie here, and they I don't think that they really get it. Like how many teams there really are in a concentrated metro area. I mean, like you go to say Tulsa, and the best players are going to Tulsa Athletic, and there might be other options there, but they're not as strong. Even if you look at like the state league level and you go to Colorado, the stronger players in Colorado typically lean towards playing for the Harpos. Because of all the things that the Harpos bring. It mirrors a lot to what we do in Minneapolis, where a lot of people want to be part of us, but at the end of the day, you do also have to think about number one, and that's, am I getting playing? an environment where I'm going to get better, and not just am I playing under a banner that's gonna make me look cool. You got you know what I mean. And
well, not only that, but like, and this is like amateur opportunities, right? This is semi-pro shit here, so it's not like
it's a stepping stone.
There's a USL team in Colorado, but you're not going to necessarily get a chance to play there just because you're living in Colorado.
Right, exactly. And then your options are playing in the UPSL, which isn't very strong in Colorado in that region, or it's playing for the FC Denver, Aztecs, like the local stuff, and it's just men's league teams, right? So yeah, but in our region, there's so many options, and like, say what you want to say about people like FC Minneapolis. There's still talent that comes out of the FC Minneapolis setup, and they're a hard team to beat in our UPSL conference. There's Vlora, like there's just a lot of really good teams, and that's not even talking about the fact that you look at our state men's league, and a lot of the talent that's in the state men's league is equally as good and can play in a lot of these competitions, but they just don't because of their own personal needs, wants, desires, or their personal situation. So there's a lot of players here, and it's sustainable from a player pool perspective, but having all the other setups, it's not sustainable to continue to hold these players accountable underneath our umbrella when they have other options.
One other way I wanted to talk about what's not sustainable is this idea that like it takes a lot of people to run a team.
Yeah, dude, it does.
When you think about like the coaching staff, it's not just the head coach. You've got assistants, you've got the goalkeeper coach. You got to make sure that your game day is staffed by volunteers. And when you have 3 home games a week or whatever, that gets tough, right? When you're tripling the size of your commitment, it's harder to find interns to cover it up. It's harder to find guys like you and me in the booth, everything.
Well, think about the fact that we didn't charge for our UPSL games.
And they were packed sometimes, right? Like some of those games drew.
Yeah. Do you remember when we were sitting in the booth in the first UPSL game, and I was texting Dan and I said, we're literally leaving like a $200 plus bill off the table.
And that was just Brooklyn Knights. Like that was just like 25 people from Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center area.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at like, you don't even think about the fact that like there's we haven't touched on it, but there's budgetary reasons and concerns for all of this as well. Like, yeah, it's popular for us to be in all these competitions, and I know that the leagues want us to be in them.
Travel.
I know that the other club owners, whether they like us or not, they see the benefits of having us as a club in their leagues and playing against them, because like I don't want to sound conceited at all here, but I'd have to believe that when it comes to their home draws against us, when we hit the road, we travel like Wisconsin sports fans, and we go to shit, and people want to see us play, and they might come out because we're a marquee matchup wherever we go. It's like being the Harlem Globetrotters,
That's for sure. That's funny.
It's the non-league Harlem Globetrotters. So then there's budgetary concerns. The travel piece, like we were unable to, and this is the last point I'll make on this one before I'll let you wrap it up. It's hard for us, and when we look at the player survey, when some of the players were like, I really wish we had a bigger bus. I really wish we had the option to stop.
Were you putting them on the short bus?
We didn't have a short bus, but we had like a medium bus, and it was good enough, and it did the job.
A medium bus.
But no, it really was a medium bus. It was like the smallest coach bus you could possibly get. But like some of the players were like, I really wish we had the opportunity to have like multiple or better meal choices on the road. And it wasn't like we were like, hey, eat a Big Mac and go play. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that, but it was more of like some of the things that like reasons why players like what we do is because we take a professional swipe at we take a professional approach at being amateur. Yeah. And we kind of lost a little bit of that because of how much things actually cost. Mm-hmm. are we gonna buy a mega bus and outfit it with Wi-Fi and have a shower in there and a sauna and
Wait,
all that stuff?
already a
No,
bus?
I mean, I don't know if that's actually a thing, but what I'm saying here. We didn't have the opportunity to go back to some of those little fine details that made people really like playing with us.
Right.
So, but I'll pause there. I'll let you go for a little bit.
Well, I think that there's a lot of cons to being the NPSL, right? But I think there are a lot of people out there who might feel some sadness, might be upset that we're leaving because they're really into the pros, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you, or they've got some cons in their mind about leaving the NPSL, and I think that those are mitigated. The pros of the NPSL, the things that people liked so much about us being in it, are mitigated by the USL2 developing locally. I'm really excited for this, right? I was happy when we were kind of in the shadows talking about joining the USL2, and we heard that there's one other team locally who's going to join, and who could it be? And we had a guess, but now there's two. Now we have Rochester, right? So yeah, we're giving up local rivalries, but I think we're going to reforge them with new ones. Like when you think about St. Croix and Rochester, like these are going to be teams that draw some of the talent that is not able to play for us anymore, because that's 20 guys on the roster that are going to have to get eliminated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and then you think about like a great Canadian road trip could be in the cards every summer. I don't know about you, but like I'm excited for like new narratives and new traditions to develop. And we'll talk about this in a second, but every time we join a new league and get comfortable in it and see some players 2 or 3 times, you get what the team is about. And you can start ripping them. You can, you know what I mean? You can start anticipating the matchup, and you understand the narrative around each game. I think this last year in the USL2, we were still trying to figure out like, who is Winnipeg? And you only get to see them once, and you get to see them on their shitty stream, and you don't really know. But like 2-3 times around, we're going to start to really understand what's going on down there in Rochester. We're going to really understand who these St. Croix guys are. And I think these rivalries are going to be really strong.
I think the one thing that I'll add to this is that if you look at historically, I mean, you look at the NPSL historically. We'll boil down to the NPSL. In the PLA, like I would have loved to see what year 2 of the PLA could have been. I loved the teams we were playing against. And it was just like the people who ran that outfit were, from a league perspective, were really great people. Still people to this day that I still am in regular contact with, and we have no connection at all besides the fact that we played in the PLA together. And you look at what could have been year 2, year 3 in the PLA, would have been awesome. But then you look at the NPSL, UPSL aside, we kind of, we've hit lightning in that league 2 years in a row. But in the NPSL, what did we do in the NPSL, Nate, that we found out that we can do the best? And that is go in, find out what's going on, go at it, see what we can do, and then year 2, year 3 after that, we start to blow the doors off it because we understand it and we know how to compete in it. Yeah, I think, and I truly think that's something that we absolutely can do at the USL2 level in the next couple seasons, and we can get really dangerous in the highest level of non-professional soccer. Yeah, I really truly believe we can do that. But it goes down to any decision that's made, in a corporate setting or in your day job, like is year 1 of a large initiative ever great? No, it's not. You have to learn the things you don't know, and then you have to course correct, and then you need to focus on the things that really matter. And for our club, it's downsizing and focusing on the thing that we think is the most important.
Yeah. One of the things, John, one of the advantages I guess I see in this move is that it's going to raise the bar for which, first of all, for the players in the system, and that how they hold themselves, right? Like there's really no middle ground left for players to land in. There's no NPSL. So on one hand, that means a lot of players are going to miss out on making that leap out of the UPSL squad, out of the futures, right? But I see it playing out something like this, like for the most successful players in the Minneapolis City system, you play for futures in high school, in college, right? Late high school, early college. You spend a few gap years developing at college, and then it's USL2 time for the true cream of the crop after all of that, right? Like you come back home, you play, you get to hang out with your friends and family again, and you get to play for a top team with the club that helped you develop, right? And that means more players developing at a high level that move on to bigger things. Like the NPSL was fine for that. And I think that, we've got Brandon Bai and Luke Hawkinson to point at, but if we're honest with ourselves, like Brandon Bai fell into our laps thanks to some sleuthing and heavy recruiting from you, knowing that he was coming to town for the summer. And Luke Hawkinson grew up here and just had connections with a lot of the guys that played in the clubs. So we were able to get him in the PLA year and then bring him back after he'd already played at Creighton. Right. So I just feel like it's going to be so much easier to recruit and develop players through this futures pipeline into the USL2 due to them playing at like a higher level with more visibility. They're going to get seen by more and more clubs. There's going to be more Loic Massanbis, John. I mean, I can guarantee you that. It's just it's going to be a matter of who sees them and who wants to take a chance on them.
Yeah, and you have to look at the other side of the coin too, is that we're going to miss out on a lot of top talent that we just make the wrong decision on, and that happens in sports. Like how many players in look at the NFL or even Major League Baseball, where like a change of scenery unlocks a guy's potential. That you maybe saw it for 1 year, but you're like, it's not working really. Maybe we part ways, shake hands, best for you, best for the club, that you go a different direction, and then they come back and kill us. That's probably going to happen because you're not going to be able to, like you said, have a home for everybody. But it from a futures perspective, this decision makes it even more important for the futures players that they bring it, because the opportunities are there for them to move on. But if they're kind of casually going through the future season and they're I might be a starter or a fringe player on a starting roster for the futures, and I'm kind of just going through the motions because I'm trying to get ready for, say, like my season at Augsburg, and I'm not really focusing on my craft, that I can actually take advantage of what Minneapolis City can do to elevate me. That those type of players might not be back after a year or two with the futures program, because
they're already kind of not back. So that's good, but there's going to be less and less of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna kind of change the subject a little bit and talk about how this came to be and the legality of it all. I'll let you finish your thought.
Well, I was gonna say, like, my last thoughts on this is I hear everyone who's like, oh, no more NPSL, no more rivalry matches versus Duluth, and that's why I came out, because I only went to that game every year, and
we'll talk about that in a second. I'm over that argument already.
Me too.
I'll tell you
Me too. But what I wanted to say is, I hear you, but that's not the point of all this. The point of all this is to be sustainable as a club and to put out a good product. And yes, it stinks on paper for some of the things, but this is a good move. And for all the things that the NPSL did for us or didn't do for us, I think that this is a really good move for us. And it might not be as apparent now or in year one of this new transformation out of that league, but I think that it will happen in the years to come.
Yeah. So of course, none of this would happen without consultation. We voted earlier in October, and I wonder, John, I didn't get to see it. How did that member vote go? Like, was it even close, or was there some concern out there?
I'll be honest, I didn't even see it.
Wow.
I gave my opinion of what I think should be done, and I won't say what that is, so to create controversy. But I gave my opinion and was like, whatever we collectively decide, that this is my opinion, and I will go forward with whatever we decide. And whatever the members decide, we've made some really great decisions for this club through the members having a voice, and that's very important to us. And I was willing to let the members, go forth and give us what you're have at it. Yeah. And for me, is it going to change much if I don't, hit the pulpit for my my opinion? No, it's not going to change. I'm still going to be up in the booth with all you fellas. I'm still going to be around the team and helping the coaching staff out however they want me to be involved or not involved. And I'm still going to do whatever it takes. I'll take tickets if I have to. I'll coach a team if I have to. I'll do whatever. So this decision to me was up to the members, and that's where we left it at. And I wasn't gonna get any more involved, which is why I didn't really see, and honestly care to see what all the individual results were.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think from what I heard, what I saw on social media, there was, some sentiment, right, from the members around how they really are going to miss the rivalries. And you brought it up just a second ago, but still excited to create new ones. And those NPSL rivalries, they've been so good to us. They've been so good to the podcast. They've been so good to the narrative. They've been so good to the brand, right? Like Duluth and their donkey soccer, where every game is a big game. How cool was that for 5-6 years? Twin really Stars cool. And the Darbakis, like yelling, Kareem yelling at the ref about being a grown ass man when he's out there defending out there, and Steve is defending him like a college freshman.
Yeah,
there was the. It's like I want to go back and talk about some of your favorite moments from the NPSL, because this is a valid concern. It's valid. It's valid to be sad about, like, shit. We've had some really good years in the NPSL. Every season continues to surprise us for one reason or another. I mean, and to give that up feels like a loss.
It does feel like a loss, but with time, that's like you mentioned, that stuff will come out of the USL too, and it will continue to cultivate in the UPSL at the futures level. But if we're talking about like favorite moments or like things that I definitely remember and want to highlight, I think it really goes down to two for me. And number one being the fact that for some like weird like Ouija board reason, we beat Duluth 4-2 to win the title multiple years in a row. Like it's a 6-goal scoreline twice to win a title.
Yeah.
Like in what world does that ever happen in any sport? Like that's the same score, and it's against your rival, and it's in the last matchup of the season to win a championship. Like that never happens. And so that's number one for me. Number two was just see, and this goes down to like player personnel. What the Oliver twins and their weird twin hive mind when they play soccer can do to you and then for you. Like and that goes back to like the cultivating a home for talent in the local area and leaning on it, that the Olivers were able to move over and truly go from a home where they were doing just fine. Like Justin and Tyler were doing just fine with the Twin Stars. And then in different years moving over to playing with us and seeing how much they became like diehard, like members of the Brotherhood and playing for the badge, and how they went all in on being part of what we've created. And I think that a little bit of the pre-Minneapolis City Oliver stuff in the NPSL was the chip on their shoulder for not getting selected in our PLA year to be on our team.
Oh, but, really?
Yeah, I think that probably was some of it. But then them changing their mindset to be like, wow, I really want to be a part of that. And then this past season when things weren't going great, them both saying like, fuck this. I need to get back in there and I need to like instill
do
on
what I
these
can.
guys. Like, I might not have what I used to, but I'm going to go in there and I'm going to fight and I'm going to try to get it back however I can. And I thought that to me is like NPSL soccer at its finest. Like, and then if you look at like the grand scheme of things, like not being able to like actively have a reason to follow Vinny Bell in Cleveland anymore. like I don't know how many more years he's gonna play. It seems like he never ages. He's always been 40 years old, but able to perform. But like those type of like legendary, like, you know, conversation starters of like the name Vinny Bell, and it's synonymous with that league. And we're not going to have that anymore. But I'm going to miss a little bit of that. I for sure am. But those are kind of my moments. And also beating Duluth 6-1 on their place and absolutely humiliating them was awesome. And I'm not going to miss the back and forth with some of their supporters and or club members.
Yeah.
Moving forward.
I think I'm going to go the other way, John. I'm going to talk about what I'm not going to miss. And I think it's just the annoying stuff year in and year out that is just like, what are these people doing in playing soccer? Like when you think about the lacrosse heiresses, right, who are just like canceling games left and right, or like can't find a field to play on. Like, what a joke. Like, why are you in the league? Or like some of those games against the Twin Stars were like there were crotch bites and dick stomps, and it's just out of hand. And there's in the technical difficulties shit. Yeah, it's just like organizationally, some of these teams are just not there. And I'll tell you what, I'll take the frustrations of like showing up on game day at a UPSL game and having an opposing coach handwrite his roster on a piece of paper, right? Over like, are we even going to play a game this week? So that's that's the other direction, man. I think. But those are all kind of like looking back on it. It's just kind of like, oh, good old NPSL, you bunch of fuck faces. Like you can chuckle about it now, but at the time, incredibly, incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know if what I'm going to say is going to get anyone in trouble. I kind of don't care. But the UPSL is the UPSL. Like there are UPSL things that we are going to have to always deal with being in that league. But some of the NPSL stuff that like rubbed me the wrong way from an organizational perspective, which was a breath of fresh air in seeing what the USL structure is and how they run things and how they're set up, was just such a breath of fresh air. Like they get it. But a lot, like one of the things that I will not miss is just kind of like the double standard of like requirements and like, I'm not going to say like discipline, but like, you know, I don't know how else to describe it, but just the things where it's like, are we being picked on because we're pushing back on things that and no one else is because they don't care? Or
sometimes the rules like extra applied to us.
Yeah, there you go. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like it feels like you're just being scolded for doing something the right way, even though it's not the right way in their eyes. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not gonna miss that. I truly enjoy like where I sit. Like I had to fill out a match replay and report on each player that featured for Minneapolis City, home and away, in a system that graded our players against all the other players in the USL ecosystem. I'm talking about like championship to 2, and championship and Division 1 teams would be looking at that when they want to look at players to elevate or to move into a roster.
Really?
Yeah. And we're in year 1, we didn't perform well enough to get players noticed. I thought, you know, people like Luik, I constantly was grading him as he was performing. But I was putting stuff in the system, and then I'm looking at other teams and I'm like, yeah, like I think someone like Jonah could elevate the way he's been playing to one of the maybe lower level USL 1 teams and be a good roster player, a good roster guy. Be a good addition to help fill out a roster. But do the NPSL have anything like that? Like, were they affiliated to help elevate players to a higher level? They were not. And it was all focused on just the NPSL, where now in the USL2 ecosystem, I'm lifting up the hood a little bit here. You look at our proximity to professional soccer now. A short trip away from us is Madison. A short trip away from Madison is the newly announced professional team in Milwaukee. Now there's a pretty straight pipeline down Highway 94 for players, not only in our setup, but also the St. Croix setup and the Rochester setup, to be able to have them get seen in a player database to help out and move their game and elevate to what some of these players or all of these players want to do, and it's play at the highest level possible. And
so I've wondered. Oh, go ahead.
In the NPSL, it was stunted, and it was like it was franchise soccer in its own franchise model.
And I wonder, John, then, given that, what are the players saying about the move? Like, you're pretty tight with a lot of players. You text a lot of players, whether they're here in Minneapolis or away at college. I mean, is there excitement around this? Is there trepidation? How are we feeling?
I haven't talked to a ton of players directly about it. Some of the players were like, the texts that I got after were like reminiscing about the old days. Like, oh, remember when we beat Duluth 6-1? Like stuff like that. And like, man, I'm going to miss that kind of stuff. But it was never like, I think we need to stay in the NPSL. Like there was not like one singular conversation I had where it was like, this is a bad move. I think that the players in this area were on, at least in our ecosystem, were so high on being the best that we ran into a buzzsaw in all of USL2 that we faced off against, being like, holy shit, there's another gear. And if I'm a competitor, I want to stay at that higher gear. I don't want to go back. I have not talked to many futures players, but I am interested in now that you mention it, asking them, now that they've moved from first year, what are they thinking about it? Like, are they worried that like there's now a ceiling that they've quickly run up against and they can't bust through it? Or are they excited that if, like I mentioned, if they perform in that setting, that they can move into the next step, which is a considerable step up from what the intermediate step was last year and in years past.
Yeah. Well, John, I think it's important to cover off before we wrap this up is like, the club is still very focused on its vision moving forward, right? And I think that we're going to see the same three things that the club has always set out to do, just done at a higher level and a little bit more high stakes, a little bit more intense, at times. But you're still going to, like, are we still grounded in recruiting and retaining top local talent? Of course. But that player pool just got 20 to 30 guys smaller. So what does that mean for the guys that really want to play in the USL, that really want to play in the USL too? It's still a system that starts in high school and the younger college level with the futures, and builds those guys, builds on that, and tries to turn them into top tier semi-pro players. Sure, but I think the biggest thing is that is kind of like how those players are going to get there.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've said it multiple times before. It's still going to be a performance-based situation for us. It's just that the margins are now thinner, and I think it always was a thin margin. And I think a lot of players we've had in our setup have maybe at times thought they should be one place when the coaching staff and the front and the playing side of things has thought maybe that they're not ready for it. I think you're going to get a little bit more of that. like, well, I'm just as good as that guy. Why is he? Why not? So it's going to be a case. It's going to be a little bit more of the conversations with the staff, having and being more man managers and setting expectations with our players to say, like, this is the situation, this is the landscape, like, this is your path, this is what you are or not doing to continue on that. And then there's that, like, let's have a serious discussion and a handshake and go our separate ways if that's what has to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I think that part of that is going to come from just the competition getting higher, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have these guys that really, really want it and really, really think they deserve it, and that are, like you said, probably razor thin margins as far as why you're not getting picked week in, week out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of environment that, like, honestly, you kind of want out of a club, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think what it does is it's going to help the player base. And we're definitely talking a lot more than I had anticipated when we were putting the notes together here about the futures and the impact of that. And than I actually had anticipated, but it's a very relevant conversation to have, because I also think what's going to happen is we're going to see the younger futures players, excuse me, the cream rising to the top of the heap for that younger group of players. And what that's going to do is you're going to see maybe these higher level colleges coming into the state, and maybe colleges from outside of the state, and not just maybe in the region, but outside the region.
Schools.
Yeah, you're going to see maybe a guy who in previous years would have been maybe, we'll just call it a MIAC all-star, playing at a Gustavus or a Carleton or a Augsburg. You're going to maybe see them going to, maybe where there's more of a pipeline to, like, the UW Milwaukee's and the Green Bays that we've kind of seen, or maybe it's out of state, and you're seeing these bigger Division I level schools coming in and being able to get more eyeballs on some of the talent that we know is here, and they're not defaulting to the MIAC, which isn't great for the MIAC, but there's so many good younger players that the MIAC's going to be fine. I mean, you've seen it more than anyone has this year with your second day job with doing the play-by-play for Augsburg, that the MIAC has elevated big time this year.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
those are kids they're kids that are playing at Joy Athletic, playing at St. Croix, playing, you know what I mean? Like, it's an NPSL heavy league all of a sudden this year.
Yeah. And I mean, and then you look at, like, you're watching a game and specifically you're watching an Augsburg game, and then you look at all of a sudden you're looking at Camel too, and you're like, wow, like, I know he played for the Futures, but look what he's doing in the MIAC.
Yeah, 7 goals.
Yeah, you're looking at Carlos Robles hitting game winners for
Gustavus.
For Gustavus, and he was kind of like a fringe player. He was an important piece of the Futures while he was involved in it, but he wasn't like an outstanding player in it when from a performance perspective. But he was a quality good player that maybe he would have gotten a look, or Camel would have gotten a look if at a bigger school. But it's good for the MIAC. And then, I mean, we haven't said much about Nick Kent, who's having a fantastic season, starting every minute for McAllister in the back line, and what he could maybe have done if he would have gone to a bigger school than McAllister from a soccer perspective. So right. I think all the good things that have come out of our program with the elevation of the profile of Minnesota soccer and the players here, I think it will continue. And to your point, I think it's only going to get stronger.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, I mean, it's just another page after all is said and done. This transition is just another page turned in the great book of Crows soccer. So far the story has been great. We started with the PLA. You and I were just reminiscing today about the trip to Madison that was taken with 11 players, right?
Yeah, that was so funny that it came up on your story. Just our ragtag bunch of guys that went to Madison and ended up pulling out that win to keep us respectable in the PLA that season.
Yep. And just absolutely random that it that it popped in, and I was like, man, that was great. I got the entire team in the shot, and it was just people milling around the bench.
And we joked about how happy Sam Forsgren looked because he was probably still drunk from his flight from France. And then
Still played the full 90.
Yeah, that smile quickly got wiped off of his face when he realized he had to play a full 90 and like ball out in order for us to get that W. But yeah, I think the one thing that I know that we didn't really address that some people, and that was, and this is my final thought, and I definitely your input on this one was a lot of folks around the local soccer community here, the journalists or the more than casual fan, was wondering why we didn't move the futures into the NPSL and we ditched the UPSL. And to answer that question for folks, at least from my opinion perspective, and this is not the collective club response, I will definitely throw that out there, was twofold. One, if it's not broke, why should we try to fix it? Why would we look at moving a good thing to the NPSL when the NPSL is leveling up? The UPSL is also leveling up at a little bit of a slower pace, but it's leveling up. Why would we move those players that might not be ready for that yet into a different league? I think that the UPSL, as it currently stands and the trajectory it's growing on, I think it's absolutely perfect for a 16, 17, 18-year-old to play in, to get their first taste of the competitive level that might be what they're trying to get to as a stepping stone for the next thing. And I don't think it would have been smart for us to do that. I look at the physicality of it. I like, look at the Duluth team that rolled out this year. What do you think would have happened if we threw our best 11 futures players at Duluth that summer night when they came into prep week? What do you think would have happened?
It would have not gone well.
Yeah, and it wasn't because we don't have a good 11. It was because those were grown ass men that like were trained in well in a system to play for the summer. And I don't think that that's something that we could ask of a 16, 17, 18-year-old to be able to do, to just carry a torch of our past success. Like that's a lot of pressure on that that age group. And so to answer those folks who were like, why didn't you do that? It's not a smart move. And I don't think it ever will be a smart move. Unless for some reason the UPSL in this region folds, or it starts to get to a point where it's just it goes the wrong way and it's so dysfunctional that it's not doing us any good. But right now, there was no like, and outside of that St. Cloud game, the Granite City game, there was no hands down runaway game this year for the futures kids. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And that was my point, right? Is that the UPSL is competitive for that level, right? And it's also, it's a teaching opportunity for these guys who are coming, they're finishing high school, that are maybe wrapping
or still
or like wrapping up their first year at Luther College or Gustavus, where they've been riding the bench, like things like that, right? Like these are, the UPSL is perfect for those kind of learning opportunities. And we've seen in the past, and it's just like proven developmental science, that if you throw somebody in over the deep end, out of their depth, it has the potential to destroy their confidence, to destroy their love for the game, right? To really set them back in their developmental process, if not completely set them off the path, turn them off altogether, right? So that's not something the club wants to do. And that's not something any organization would hope to do. But like, I just think that from watching the UPSL games, from watching the NPSL games unfold, and how some of those kids that did get the call-ups in the NPSL handled themselves, it really was only until the end of the season, right? After completing an entire UPSL season, that you could see some of those young guys comfortably holding their own against even just like Joy Athletic. Right. Sioux Falls Thunder. So like it's more wishful thinking in my mind than anything, right? And like you said, just holding on to this idea that holding on to old rivalries, holding on to this, like carrying a torch for
Yeah.
past successes. And like, you know what? We can just find some new successes. It's okay.
Yeah, like if I'm a futures guy and I know enough about the club and some of the older players, that the old guard that's been there and been so successful, and I look at like AO and I play defense for the futures, I'm like, I'm not that guy. I'm me. Like why should I be pigeonholed into the formula that worked? It's not fair. And also, like, what really has the NPSL done for us outside of just being a home and helping us create the rivalries and maybe elevate a handful of players to another level? Like, what have they really done for us that would have had us screaming to move a team, to move the UPSL team, the futures team, into that? I don't think that there's anything that says that it was a hands down, like, no brainer.
Right.
And even if like a Nisa was like, hey, you know what? Why don't you move your team into our league? It would have been like, no, I don't think that's right either.
Right.
And maybe there's like the Midwest Premier League that, the DeKalbs and the Bavarians play in. Maybe that makes sense from a competitive level to move into in the future, but not the NPSL. The NPSL is not the answer for us to have a developmental team in. It's not a U23 type environment. And it's not a good growing step for us. It might be for, say, like Canada, where their 23s are almost full pros. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Where ours are like still, living at home with mom and dad and like trying to navigate lake life in the summer. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. So I wanted to throw that in there because I know there was some people that were wondering that.
Sure. No, it makes sense, man. I think, that was kind of those, I don't have too many more final thoughts on that, except that, like, it's only going to get better from here. I think we're going to forge new rivalries and new narratives around these games. And you're just going to see hopefully more and more quality come out of the club. And it'll be much, much easier than it was last summer to keep tabs on the players and understand who you want to cheer for. And you can cheer for all of them without being like, wait, who is that guy? So very excited for this change. And I think it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, absolutely. And one final note before we close out here that I want to say is, if you haven't gotten a chance to watch the MIAC this year, it's getting into crunch time and the playoffs are coming. I would highly recommend trying to get out to one of those games and go to support one of the former or current members of our club and go in it that way, and then open your eyes to how great of a situation it is and a luxury for us to have that in our backyard. Or don't even go in person, watch it online. I just want to say, give it a chance more than you have in the past, and you're really going to see like how our players are not only doing at that level, but also everyone else that isn't one of ours. And it's getting into crunch time. I've thoroughly enjoyed the umpteen number of games I've watched, to, like, not only from a recruiting perspective, just keep tabs on players, or to be introduced to new ones, and how pleasantly surprised I've been in the 7 years I've been watching MIAC soccer. I definitely would say go check it out, and it's a perfect time because it's decision time soon for not only the conference tournament, but also there's quite a few teams in our little slice here that are either nationally ranked or pushing for national rankings. So definitely check it out. So there's my MIAC soapbox. So you're welcome, MIAC coaches. All right. So thank you for listening to this week's show, and thank you to our wonderful show sponsor, footballstadiumprints.com. If you're in the market for supremely curated soccer-focused graphic design, from anything from mugs to T-shirts to sweet prints of city icons like Edor Nelson Field, the new one of the club shop, like I really got to get over there and get that one. I thought that was really cool what Steve at Football Stadium Prints did with our old club shop, RIP. And I thought it was funny that Paul bought it, and Steve was like, "You're one of 7 million that has this, or 7 billion that has one of these." So head on over to footballstadiumprints.com, fill up your cart, get that print. I'm going to do that in short order here now that I'm back home. And don't forget to use the code CROWS10 for 10% off of everything you purchase. And remember, all orders ship from the United States, so there's no pesky international shipping charges. 2023 memberships are now available. Jump in early and get that discounted price. And you can vote on things like whether or not we ditch the NPSL. And you get a voice that helps you shape the club for not only next year but for future years. We're coming up on potentially some new kit designs in the next year or so. It's on the horizon, so we know everyone loves that. So get on over to mplscitysc.com and get that membership while it's discounted. Otherwise, go pay full price, whatever you choose to do. And as a reminder, Minneapolis City is a 501c3, so consider a charitable gift to the club that loves to give back. And if you're interested in getting a hold of us, we've made it super simple. You can hit up the club on Twitter at MPLSCitySC, us here at the show at The People's Pitch, or you can contact the show via email at mcscpodcast@gmail.com. That is all for this week, folks. I am John. That was Nate. We've got interviews lined up. I think that once we stop recording today, I'm going to talk to Nate about one I think we really should get on, considering how the discussion went today. But we got some interviews lined up for the offseason. We'd love to hear if you have any requests. I know there's a few questions from some of the fans that we've kind of been holding off answering. We're gonna definitely get into that. Maybe we'll just do a dedicated show to ask John and Nate anything. We know how well that went, a few years ago with Ask John Anything. So maybe ask both of us something. So definitely hit us up. We love to hear your voices. And as always, you got hooked.
Announce Steven Gerrard.
Yeah.